Hello again, we've got a sixth video in the quadratic series, and in this one we're looking at not just completing the square but how we can use it. Hopefully in a previous video you've seen, but I'll remind you if you haven't, how to complete the square for these two here. Spotting that the x coefficient is -4, we should realise that we can use the expansion of x minus 2 squared, which is x squared minus 4x, so far so good. We're ending up with a +4, and you should notice I don't want a +4, I want a +1, so I have to take away 3 from both those, and then they are the same. So I've now completed the square for the first one. I'm just going to do the same for the second one before we move on. Feel free to pause it and have a go yourself before you see the answer. And if you have paused it, you should now be pleased with yourself because you've noticed that you've ended up with that answer there when you completed the square. Now, we can do two things. First of all, I'm going to solve. And if we're solving, that means that y equals 0, which means that 0 is equal to x minus 2 all squared, and that's minus 3. Rearranging the equation, if we add 3 to both sides, we'll end up with that there. Then if we square root, it means I'll square root 3. Remember, it could be a positive or a negative version when you square root. And finally add on 2 to both sides. So I have 2 plus or minus the square root of 3 is x. So our two solutions are 2 plus the square root of 3 or 2 minus the square root of 3. And that would work in the same with this one. For this one, however, I'm going to find it's a positive x squared, so it's going to have a positive parabola shape, which means I'm going to be finding the minimum. Now, for this to be a minimum, let's have a look at the two terms. Well, this one doesn't change, so we're always going to be taking away 10. This one is a variable because it's got an x in it. Now, because the bracket is squared, the smallest it can ever be is 0, because you can't square anything and get a negative number. Now, for the bracket to be 0, just to clarify, so for this one to be 0, which would create our minimum, then x plus 3 would have to be 0, which means that x will have to be -3. And if that's the case, therefore, well, that would be -3 plus 3. If we put it back into the equation, square that, you're going to get 0. So it actually means that y comes out as -10. So therefore our minimum point here has the coordinates -3, -10. And more generally, if you complete the square and you get x plus, let's say, a squared plus b, then the minimum point is always going to be the opposite side of a and whatever b is. And therefore you can use completing the square to find the minimum or indeed the maximum.